Welcome, brothers and sisters in the Squatch, to a special edition of 5 Minutes in the Lounge with Reverend Jeff. With the recent release of the Justin Smeja Statement, I feel it's time to step away from the fun for a few minutes and make a public statement regarding the serious slanderous statements made by Dr. Melba Ketchum on the Coast AM show of February 17th, 2013. For the record, here is her statement in full so that there's no misunderstanding to the context of her statement.
There's a guy who, of course, became famous because he claimed to have killed a Bigfoot, maybe more than one, and he had a couple of samples of Bigfoot meat that he supposedly sent out. And even now, after your paper is out, I see you getting blasted online by people who say that either you lied about the meat or he lied, or I guess the question is that meat from a purported Bigfoot part of your study?
Yes, it is, and I'm going to give you my opinion of what I think has happened. First of all, anybody can go online and look and tell that the pictures, the two samples are different. The picture in our paper we have, it's long, wavy, mostly white hair. There's no undercoat. The sample is not dried looking. You can see fresh, pretty fresh meat on it, muscle tissue and subcutaneous tissues. And that's why we turned it up to where you could see both the haired side and the fresh side. And we even had one of the complaints was that our samples were degraded. We even had histopathology done, and the cells were all intact. It was fresh. There was no bacteria to speak of on the sample. So very, very pristine sample. If you look, there's a certain blogger out there that put some pictures up about the one that they sent to Canada. Well, first of all, the DNA is different, so it's a different sample. Let's just start by saying that. If it had been the same sample, the DNA would have run the same. Second, and we have, tremendous amounts of testing. We have a whole genome on that one, whereas they took 7 months to get, just a very small section of mitochondrial DNA, among other things. So with that said, though, you can look at the picture and see that there's an undercoat on the samples that ended up in Canada. I don't, my opinion is that perhaps they got worried because these things are human to a large extent, and there could be, repercussions because of that. And I really think that's what happened, but that's just my opinion.
Now that you heard the words spoken in her own voice, let me start out by saying, bullshit. Dr. Ketchum is playing damage control. She states that Justin Smeja had sent samples from 2 different animals to 2 different labs to cover up his actions and to avoid prosecution due to her batshit crazy theories. I've taken the time to interview persons close to the situation to obtain the facts. Since Dr. Ketchum doesn't feel the need to disclose her super-secret contacts and scientists, I'll reserve the same right and simply say I have witnesses to the conversation as it was in a public format, and it can be verified if necessary, but no one's going to make a stink over this. By now, everyone is aware of the Justin Smeja account of the shooting of 2 Bigfoot in the fall of 2010. Justin was hunting bear when he shot the 2 animals as he thought they were bear. He left the bodies behind because he was not into Bigfoot and had no idea what he had shot and returned home. If you're not familiar with the story, please visit thebigfootreport.com and view the free documentary, I Killed Bigfoot. It'll fill you in on the rest of the details. Shortly after the fact, Justin had been contacted by Bigfoot investigators about his posted story, and they returned to the site and searched for any remains that may have been left at the time. I personally interviewed Justin on the Squatchers On podcast and asked him how long it had been before he had returned to the site, and he had replied 35 days. 35 days unprotected from the elements and forest animals is an eternity, and the chances of finding anything left from the Bigfoot was slim, yet worth the effort anyhow, and Justin and the others returned to the site and tried to find any evidence they could. They were able to locate a suspect piece of animal flesh that was dark brown in color and was still a good enough shape to hold DNA for testing. The reporting that Justin Smeja turned in a slab of meat from the thigh of a Bigfoot is not true. No claims of actual evidence were ever made, and in fact, the piece of meat was suspected to be bear from the start. After waiting literally a couple of years for results to come from the DNA testing done by Dr. Ketchum, Justin and Bart Cortino had the same meat sample tested at an independent lab. The results took 8 months and came back as bear with human contaminant. We will return to that later, but Dr. Ketchum to this point is claiming that Justin's sample is still included in her study and does in fact contain Bigfoot DNA. Once the Ketchum camp got wind that the independent DNA test had come back without anything novel in it, she began a smear campaign. Here are the facts on the actual sample that were submitted for testing. The first statement that Dr. Ketchum makes that the samples are different, you can tell by the pictures and that they are not even close. Well, folks, we're about to see these pictures in question, and you can judge for yourself. First up was the largest picture of the piece of meat that was used to cut the samples for submission to the DNA labs for testing. Justin took this picture around the 10th of November 2010, shortly after returning from retrieving it. The piece of animal flesh was located using bear dogs. They're trained in locating and hunting bears. The dogs alerted the researchers, and they were able to find the piece of animal flesh. After failing to locate any other pieces of animals left behind, they returned to Justin's home and began the process of dividing the sample for submission. The next important shot is one half of the removed flesh that was planned to be salted for storage. As you can plainly see, the animal flesh is sitting directly in Justin Smeja's hand. Dr. Ketchum claims that this sample in the picture is plainly different than that of the sample that is used in her study. She also claimed that he intentionally switched samples to protect himself from possible prosecution for shooting one of the Bigfoot, as she claims they are mostly human and that would be murder. I interviewed Justin personally regarding the flesh samples, and he assured me that he has never been in any danger of being prosecuted, as the Fish and Game of California were never interested in the report, as no law would have been broken. The next frame shows the other half of the sample that was separated from the main piece. This is the piece from Dr. Ketchum's study notes. She claims you can plainly see the differences in the samples, that they came from two different sources, but it's simply not true. You can tell from the size and the shape of the sample that it is indeed the same sample and is one half of the removed chunk that was to be shipped off for testing. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the two samples. Does it look like a plot to defraud? To me, it looks like yet another failed attempt at the Ketchum camp to cast doubt on anyone in the Bigfoot world who is not agreeing with their study results. Justin has plainly stated in public on several occasions that the sample sent to Dr. Ketchum and the sample sent to the independent lab are in fact cut from the same piece of flesh. How can one be bear and the other be Bigfoot? Why do they look slightly different? Dr. Ketchum's sample was already prepped for DNA testing before the image was taken, or at least this particular picture was. Dr. Ketchum has not posted any pictures of the samples as she received it before handling, which is yet another lacking step in the documentation, because if she had, it would look very similar to the sample pictured in Justin's hand. The test results from the independent study are quite easy to understand. They found the simple fact to be that it was black bear with human contamination. Quite easy to come to that conclusion. The tests were run on several samples to include a salted piece, an untreated piece, and a frozen piece. The only piece of sample that had good enough DNA to actually test was the salted sample, and that sample was confirmed to be the other half of the separated piece of meat from the whole that was sent to Dr. Ketchum to use in her study. You can visit the SierraSiteProject.com, home of the Sierra Evidence Initiative, for more information. So what can be concluded here? One of two things are going on. Either Justin is lying about switching the samples, which the photos presented here show that that was not the case, or Dr. Ketchum is spreading misinformation in regards to the way the samples were submitted in an effort to hide the fact that her results are, well, simply put, flawed. Since the release of Justin's statements regarding Dr. Ketchum asking him to contaminate the sample has been released, I believe it's the latter. I will go on record as saying I'll stand behind what Justin Smeja has said long before I could back the batshit crazy claims of the Ketchum study. As the good book says, truth shall set you free. Until next time, I'm Reverend Jeff, and may the Squatch be with you.